Hi, this is Amy with the Genuine Table, and today we are talking about food phobias. So today I want to talk to you about how we are so scared of food. Why is this? Why is our entire country so afraid of this thing that keeps us alive? How did this happen? So I want to go through the history of our fear of food, our phobias surrounding different macronutrients, and just debunk the 4 major phobias that we have. So first, in the early 1900s, we had a growing fear of protein. We were starting to understand what macronutrients were, and people were afraid of protein because it was harder to digest. There's a man named Horace Fletcher, and I love him, and I think he's amazing and hilarious, but he came up with something called mastication, where you chew your food 100 times before you swallow it, and they even had a cheesy catchphrase, I'm trying to remember what it is. It's like, those who don't masticate will be castigated, or something like that. I don't remember, but I think it's so funny because looking back on it, it just seems so backwards from how we view food now, because protein's like the superpower of our food today. They actually did a study on this man, Horace Fletcher, who chewed his food 100 times and avoided protein, and he had amazing, this was Yale that did this study with him, he had amazing endurance, he had amazing strength and abilities, and he was 58 years old, and they thought, oh, we just figured out how to live longer, we just avoid protein. And they took this one guy and kind of based a bunch of studies off of him. And he started a trendy movement, just kind of like a health guru of the time. Well, this was shortly followed by the discovery of the calorie. They learned that the calories in our food were actually what gave us the energy that we needed to function, but they were able to measure out how many calories were in each gram of protein, fat, and carbohydrates. And they started to really base more of their science off of this. Now then we hit the World War I, World War II. So fast forward to about the 50s, when our country recovered from this and we were starting to again have more security with our food, and the calorie counting came right back. And in fact, this is the 1960s is when Weight Watchers was created in order to help people essentially count calories without having to think as hard. And it was something, again, that people were doing, trying to help us, we were trying to gain more information about our bodies. Also at this time, as they were doing more studies, they were learning how to break apart our food into these macronutrients and study them individually on mice and study the trends with people. And they were starting to see a trend of people and animals that ate saturated fat having a higher level of heart disease and Western-related illnesses. And this really sparked a big fear in the nation is, we're starting to basically eat in a way that's killing us. That's really scary. And so the lawmakers really wanted to get ahead of it. Even though the science on the issue was kind of shaky, they thought, well, we'll keep doing the studies to back this up, but we're starting to see this trend. So we're going to create the policy, create the recommendations that our country needs in order to be healthy. Again, good intentions here. The conclusion of this story, in the early 2000s, it's suddenly found that fat actually doesn't cause heart disease, and everyone's kind of like, whoops. And so now people, in addition to having the fear that we're inadvertently killing ourselves through eating the wrong foods, we also have this fear of taking advice from professionals, from scientists, from this nutrition, and we're also searching for the truth. We're kind of in that same early stage with carbohydrates as we were with fat 50 years ago, where we don't really have a lot of proof, but we're starting to see a trend in the studies that make us want to get ahead of the game. But I want to propose something revolutionary, and that is to look back. Look back over history, and we're going to go ahead and debunk each of these 4 phobias. The first food's phobia that I want to debunk today is protein. Now, I don't think there's a lot of people that are afraid of protein in our modern age, but let's go ahead and go over its benefits anyways. So protein is essentially a building block for our body. It helps to build up our muscles, our bones, our skin, our tissues. Pretty much our entire body uses protein in order to function. The second myth I want to debunk today is that we need to count calories. And I talked about this a lot in my last video, but counting calories actually overrides our body's natural signals that it has. So if we're constantly monitoring every little bite of food that we eat, sometimes we're not getting the accurate amount of calories that we need for that day. It's really, really hard to determine how many calories you need, because even if you do these calculators and these recommendations and stuff, our bodies are different from day to day depending on what we're doing. So there might be a day that I burn 3,000 calories, there might be a day that I burn 1,500, and if we're trying to always hit the same calorie goal, we can have days where our body is like starving for food. It really does need that, and we're not listening to those signals, and so our instincts kick in and teach us to grab as much food as we can. So that's my calorie counting spill. You can look at my last video for that. Food myth number 3 is that fat is bad for us. Now, this is something that I think is being debunked a lot right now, and that's great. But fat is actually essential for our brain and our nerves, and every single cell in our body needs fat in order to function properly. They all have cell membranes, which are made out of fats. Fats are actually a transportation system in our body that help to deliver fat-soluble vitamins to different parts of our body that they need. Food myth number 4. Carbohydrates are the new killer. So, and this is one I don't want to, because this is our current thing, I don't want to make anyone feel guilty or feel like I'm attacking you or criticizing you if you are cutting carbs out of your diet. Especially because we've been told. I mean, how many times have I been told this? Here's my beef with this, is that carbohydrates are actually the main source of energy for our body. Like, they're what our body was made to digest and turn into fuel for our body to function. The carbohydrates in our food are made to be released at different times, so that we have like our simple carbohydrates, which give us the initial boost of energy. We have our complex carbohydrates, which have a slower growth curve and then stay stable longer and are able to more naturally fall down. So if you're eating both of those, you are able to have sustained energy in addition to protein and fat, which show up later after a meal. You're able to have more energy. Now, we can say that yes, our bodies can learn how to use fat as fuel, and that is a valid thing. However, it's not what our bodies were made to do. Our bodies are made to use carbohydrates as fuel, and carbohydrates have not been shown to have ill effects on us when we're eating them as whole individual foods. So I'm talking about fruits, I'm talking about vegetables, I'm talking about whole grains, and occasional simple carbs such as sugar, white bread, things like that. And if we're able to eat those as a group, they're not shown to have a detrimental effect on us. So I would like to suggest that maybe our problems are not based on a specific macronutrient, and we can take a deep breath and relax. Okay, so at this point you might be saying, all right, that's all great and fine, but obviously we're not healthy in America, so what are we supposed to do? We can't just give up. And I agree, I don't think we need to just give up. I'm not advocating for that. However, I do think that our bodies are made to be able to tell us these things, and that we're out of touch with them. I have more about that again in my last video about our body's signals. I think that if we get in touch with where our food comes from and interact with agriculture in a positive way, maybe even grow our own herbs or plant a garden, I think that can help us be more aware of our food and be more grateful for it, and naturally want those types of foods as well. I think that what I've seen is that I've been learning how to cook vegetables different ways. I've been learning how to cook individual slices of meat different way. I've been learning how to bake bread and make yogurt and all of these things over the last 10 years. I'm so busy trying to find the foods that feel best and that I enjoy the most that there's not really room in my diet or my life for a lot of processed foods. Now, I don't, like I've talked about before, I don't avoid it completely. I do have cake. I'll even eat Oreos. I'm not avoiding anything completely. I don't feel the need to buy those foods anymore. I'm not really interested in them. So I guess this is the end of it. And let me know what you think in the comments, and if you agree or if you think that food phobias are serving you in your life. Okay, we'll see you next week. Bye.